Hello guys, in our last lesson we started to learn how to play the Sicilian defense, and more specifically we looked into this variation with e6, and after we get into the open Sicilian, queen b6 followed by bishop c5 with this idea of putting pressure on the knight but also on the f2 pawn. Of course no one is going to do it, but we said that if they did something like knight c2 e2, we have e5, the knight has to move or they lose the knight, and then we take on f2 followed by checkmate. But again, since no one is going to do it, we looked into all the other variations like knight to a4, bishop to e3, and so on. But the one variation we did not talk about is what if they do after queen b6, what if they just go knight to b3? And guys, that's exactly what we're going to do in this lesson. There are many ways you could continue here as black, but the way I like to teach it to my students is to adopt the hedgehog variation. And this is going to take me to the next point in this lesson. After we talked about the hedgehog, I'm going to show you how you could transition from this position that we get against knight to b3 into that hedgehog variation. And finally, guys, you're going to see me play a game using this opening just for you to start seeing it in action. Now, another thing that I wanted to do is address something that a lot of you mentioned in the comments for our last lesson. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so before we get to the comments, let me show you again how we get to that hedgehog variation typically. So after e6, pawn takes, knight takes. Now here, instead of queen b6, you typically see pawn to a6. And now the white pieces, instead of going knight to c3, they insert pawn to c4. And of course guys, we're going to look into knight c3 as well. But pawn to c4 is going to be the move that a lot of people find challenging, because this is what we call the Maroczy bind, and basically it is just claiming that d5 square. It is also controlling b5, and one of the main objectives of the hedgehog formation is to strike on d5 or b5. But anyways, after pawn to c4, knight to f6, putting pressure on that pawn, knight to c3, then the queen goes to c7, and this is one of the main things you're going to have to do when we look into that transition from the line that we learned in our last lesson to this formation. The queen is on b6, we gotta bring it back, we have to do pawn to a6, and so on. But we'll talk more about it later. So after queen c7, we got a3. They don't want us to do bishop b4, but this move is also to expand more on the queen side. So after a3, b6, notice how the hedgehog is getting ready, so we need the other pawn over here on d6. But after b6, we have bishop to e3, bishop to e7, the rook goes to c1. We know that we don't like this rook on the same file as our queen, but we should be fine by now. So after rook c1, we simply castle, bishop e2, bishop goes to b7, f3, pawn to d6, so we finally have all of our pawns where they have to be, and this is one thing for you guys to remember. But then after castle, we're going to do either knight c6 or knight to d7. Mainly, guys, this is something to keep in mind. The development of this knight is typically flexible. It depends if it goes to c6 or to d7 many times. It depends on white's action on the queen side. If you're planning to do, if you see a4, planning to do a5, maybe this knight wants to come to c6 sometimes. But other times, it wants to go to d7 to get to c5. And sometimes, of course, we also bring it to e5. So after knight b to d7, guys, you could see finally the queen is developed, connecting the rooks. And at this point, I'm going to show you one of the most important things that you need to learn from this system. And even if you never played the Sicilian defense like myself, I never made it my main weapon, but you do need to understand the main ideas if you want to become a better chess player, you want to learn more chess, or if you simply want to study the games of the greatest players in history, you guys have to understand the Sicilian defense. There's no other way around it. It's one of the most popular openings, and all of these great players have used it. So what plan am I talking about? Well, after you have this formation, guys, you're going to see this rook, the kingside rook, going to e8, and the other rook going to c8. Now, what's the idea behind it? Well, you're gonna see it in a moment. So rook to c8, you're gonna see that the main idea is, of course, to bring this rook to the semi-open file, but now the queen is going to hide on b8. You're going to see b4 many times, and now queen to b8. Why do we hide the queen here? Well, guys, one of the main plans in this formation, and this is one that you have to remember, is to bring this bishop from e7 to c7. So this queen is going to be typically behind the bishop. So we're going to do bishop d8, bishop c7, trying to put pressure on h2. And this is now going to start revealing the other ideas behind this formation. So after a move like rook f to d1, here you're going to see bishop d8 followed by bishop c7. Now, why do we want to do this maneuver? Why are you going to see it in so many important games out there? Well, guys, the idea of this formation is to be a defensive setup. You're going to be very defensive, and then you're going to find the right moment to insert d5 or b5. And sometimes those breaks come with a pawn sacrifice if it's necessary. Now, what you are never going to do is a move like pawn to e5. If you did something like e5, if you feel that temptation to just attack the knight, well, you're going to immediately give up this square so the knight could use it. Remember that your bishop is not controlling this diagonal. And of course, you're giving up the d5 square. So we never, or almost never do that move. Instead, we're looking for this maneuver to put the bishop on c7. So typically you're gonna see the white pieces do something like king h1, bishop c7, and the idea behind this move is to, first, when d5 is played, they don't want bishop h2 to come with a check, but also it allows them to put the bishop on g1. Of course, they could do so many other things like pawn to g3, pawn to h3, but now you understand the idea behind this move. And of course, from here, we're looking for the right moment to do d5. And this is the secret of the hedgehog formation. You want to sting your opponent with one of those spines, either d5 or b5. And to make it easier for you to remember, you know you're gonna break on a light square for the most part, d5 or b5. Of course, I always advise you guys to review games played by masters, and you're gonna see that sometimes they even break on a5, sometimes they even do h5, h4, h3, but that's going to be something you're going to review on your own. At this point, you should know what the hedgehog formation is all about. But now let me show you one more thing that is extremely important to this lesson and your evolution as a chess player. Guys, when we talk about the Sicilian defense, we know that it comes out of e4. It's gonna be the king's pawn opening and then c5, right? Well, I also wanted to talk to you, if you want to continue to evolve as a chess player, we have to talk about transposition, and that's one of the reasons why we're learning the Sicilian defense. Now, let me just show you a few moves of another way you could get this hedgehog variation and many other variations of the Sicilian out of d4. And actually, let me go back here to chess.com and let me do this. Look, if we start with d4, you're gonna see here queen's pawn opening, fine. Then knight f6, this is the Indian game now, knight f3, and then pawn to c5. So now I need you to pay attention to here how this is gonna be changing little by little, right? So after c5, c4, notice how now it changed to an English opening, right? And symmetrical, anti-Benoni, all of this happened. But if the black pieces take on d4, knight to d4, pawn to b6, guys, this is going to be little by little transforming into the Sicilian defense. So f3, e6, e4, d6, this is exactly the same thing. It's like if they started with e4, knight f3, eventually d4, and of course you can see the Maroczy bind over here as well. So all of this transposition is one of the reasons why we're learning the Sicilian defense and many other variations. If you like it, fine, you're welcome to let me know. We're going to go deeper into them and you could adapt them. But to me, and this is going back to the comments, the questions that you guys had, many of you said, oh, but at this point you're already teaching us a Sicilian and I feel comfortable with the Pieters, or I simply don't feel ready with the Pieters yet. Why are you teaching us another opening? Well, the intention, guys, is not for you to stop playing where you're playing. Whenever you learn new openings, if there's one that you like, you want to bring it on and you want to play it, the idea is not that you're going to replace what you already had with that new opening. The idea is that you're going to expand your repertoire, and at some point you're going to be playing 3, 4, 5, 6 different openings. But that's how it works. If you already played the Spanish opening and then you like this, the Yuko piano, well, you don't have to replace one with the other. You could say, you know what, after I learned this one, I'm going to be playing the Rui Lopez, also the Yuko piano, and maybe many other openings. So that's the idea. Now, for me, I first learned the Pieters defense. I liked it a lot. I also played the King's Indian defense, but I had to learn the Sicilian defense, the French, the Caroquin, to become a more knowledgeable, a more resourceful player. And you never know when a game could transpose from one opening into the other. And like I told you last lesson, guys, it's all about getting familiarized with the different position types. With that said, let's go back here to Lichess. I'm going to activate this. Remember, this is the encyclopedia, and we're going to get to our position. So knight f3, oh, not d6, sorry. Pawn to e6, d4, pawn takes, knight takes. We said that we're not going to do a6. Feel free to play it directly with a6 and get into that formation. But if we go queen to b6, which is the line that we are learning, and guys, this is another thing. We're learning the Sicilian in this order with this variation first because it's simpler, and now you're going to see how we go from this variation into the hedgehog, and then we're going to talk about maybe the Najdorf, then the dragon, until you find one that you really like. But again, it's more about getting this knowledge. So anyways, here we said that if knight c3, we're going to play bishop c5, which is the main variation. But we have to talk today about knight to b3. Now, remember, down here, you could see already games played by grandmasters using this variation. White pieces win. This is a draw. Look, Ivanchuk playing this as the black pieces. So after knight to b3, if I open this game by Ivanchuk, let me see. Okay, the next move he did was, look, queen to c7, bishop d3, knight f6, castle, d6, and then pawn to c4. So this is exactly what I want you guys to do. So let's do what Ivanchuk is doing. This is the guy who knows what he's doing, not myself. So this is what I do. This is why I want you to try this tool, which is completely for free. You can see what grandmasters do in this situation. So queen goes to c7, bishop e7, then castle, and from this position is all about completing the hedgehog formation with b6 and a6. So a4, this is something that I had told you before. Typically when the pawn goes to a4, of course you want to do a5, and you see that it's marked as a doubtful move, right? So it's not that good. Now from here, depending on the personal choice of the black pieces, they could do a5, I've seen that, or you could see simply knight b to d7 or knight to c6. Anyways, let's see here, knight to c6, you see a5 was coming, so the knight makes sense over here. And by the way, we also have the queen keeping an eye out on a5. So we take, now knight to b5, queen to b8, and now we get to this position. This is already move number 15. And as you can see, there's still theory. There's still other games where they have done the same thing. So pawn to a6, the knight has to go back to d4, queen b2, c5. And guys, I'm not gonna go any deeper here. If I activate the engine, well, it's saying negative 0.1, we know this is completely equal. Now I'm going to close this because we don't need this right now. But now you know. Knight to b3, queen goes to c7, bishop to d3, knight f6. We don't really care about the Maroczy bind because we know we're going to be fine with our hedgehog formation. So again, knight b3. And guys, for those of you who are new to this channel, for those of you who skipped lesson 112, please go back to it. That way all of this makes sense because we already covered the other variations. But anyways, queen to c7, you're still getting the hang of the hedgehog. You're gonna see me play a game afterwards. Hopefully you learn something there. Now, before I go along to play my games, let me show you this position and let me know what the plan would be from this position. Well guys, I know, boring, unnecessary, but truth is that if you didn't know the answer, you were just not paying attention. So anyways, from here, the plan is the same thing, the only thing we have been talking about at this point. So just to show you the plan, you could have done rook e8, or you could do what they did in this game, which is queen to b8, then queen f2. Now they did rook f to e8, not a big deal. Pawn to a3, and of course bishop to d8 to bring it over to c7. Then pawn to b4, bishop to c7. Very nice maneuver. Now whenever you see this in one of the elite games, you're going to understand it, you're going to be familiar with it. Now, after bishop c7, g3, notice that they didn't do anything like this. Pawn to g3 is customary. Sometimes you're going to see h5, h4. You're going to see knight e5. But in this game, what they did instead was queen a8. What is this for? Well, they want to break on d5. And just to show you a few more moves, we have knight to b3. And now if I activate the engine, you're going to see that it's plus 0.6, 0.5, no big deal. And the top move is going to be pawn to d5. And that's exactly what we're looking for in this formation. Now, if they take, you take, let's say, okay, knight takes, pawn takes. Now you could take on d5 easily, or the engine is also recommending bishop e5. Now I think we could just take, and you're going to be fine from this position. Now maybe doing d5 at that moment was not the best. Maybe it was. Guys, this is only going to find out only by reviewing more games and using this variation in your games. From here you're attacking b3, f3, and again, even if you just want to keep the piece, or if you play any other opening, you don't want to get into the Sicilian, that's fine. Just be open to trying new things and getting new ideas. Okay, time to play a game. Someone, a very good friend of the channel, told me that I could make it in a way that, let me see, maybe create a game that I could play as the black pieces. So let me just go here. I'm gonna do 3-2, guys. Next lesson, we're gonna be just playing games with longer time control. But just for now, let me just do 3-2 to not make this lesson so long. And let's see. So I'm looking for someone, I guess, and that way we can play a game with the black pieces. Still, it is not guaranteed that we're going to have a Sicilian defense game, you see. I could still do knight f6 and c5, but let me see if I find someone else. Let me see, create a game. And I'm going to do again, same thing, black pieces. Let's see. I know that if I abort too many times, they're going to put me in sort of timeout, so I need to be careful with that. So if not, you know, the other option is to play against the engine, but let's see. So we're playing a 2146. Okay, so let me try this. I'm gonna try getting into the hedgehog variation with a different pawn, with a different move order. But you see, it's not gonna happen. So you know what? Let's do it anyways. Let's play this game. And guys, so this is one of the things. So you see, I started like that, but now I'm going to play. I'm gonna get into what we have already learned, which is this fianchetto ideas. And even though it has nothing to do with the King's Indian defense or the piece, I'm still going to feel comfortable. Notice how he's already putting pressure on the 6, the left behind pawn, and if I just do something like e5, he's going to have d5 for him to use. Not to mention that he's going to have the d file to put pressure on it. So ideally, I wouldn't make that concession, but I don't see any other way. So I'm going to have to do e5. It comes with the tempo. And now it is true that they have the d file to put pressure on my pawn, but I'm going to place my knight on d4. Now guys, something very, very important. A weakness, and we know this is a backward pawn. A weakness is only a weakness if it can be attacked. After knight d4, if they cannot really put pressure on it, then you're not going to consider this a weakness. Okay, so I keep developing at the expense of his... oh, no, I can't. Alright, so I see that I have knight c2 if I could only deflect the queen, but that's far-fetched, so we're going to keep going. Now, is there anything I can do here? Maybe expand on the queen side, but... maybe too soon. I like my semi-open F file. So you know what? Let me just go. Let me just go A6. Okay, so B5, pawn takes is not enough. Well, let me just do queen D7. Now he always has A4. But let's see, because if he does a4, he's going to create other kind of weaknesses. Nope, he wants to come over here. Right, so I gotta get rid of that knight. And notice, guys, that I'm not that, I don't really mind that I give up the pair of bishops, because this position is more locked than anything else. Okay, so now let me, you know, I think my game is going to be on the queen side. So I'm gonna bring my rook over to the queen side. Now I would like to incorporate the rest of my pieces, but how do I do that? Right, let me do this. Maybe I can transfer over my knight. This knight is not going to do much. The only thing that I can see for him is something like bishop g5, bishop a6, but I should be fine. Okay, so c4, no, that's not gonna be an option yet. Okay, let me just do a4 then. So you see now, okay, he's going to expand on the queen side, I'm going to expand on the king side. We know how this works. Take, No. Well, this is all about hurrying it up. Okay, a4. Now notice that if he takes, now he got a protected passed pawn, but we have to give something up. Okay, so now he's... Okay, now look, I got also a protected passed pawn. So we both have the same thing. I'm thinking already of creating a blockade because it's important, just like he has it with the bishop, but we'll see. Okay, now I'm going to take here. And now I'm going, ooh, no. I wish I could do that. Okay, so maybe 98 is the way to go, followed by 96. So I wanted to do something like bishop a6 to control that, but I was going to be losing the pawn. Losing the knight. So, okay, so can I? Yeah, I think I can do this. Now bishop c6 should be coming, but now his pawn is under control. Mine could still march. But let's see. Okay, so he's simplifying the game. Fine. Okay, now what is he gonna do about this one? Okay, fair enough. So I keep activating my pieces. You know, maybe I should have done rook b4. Or maybe I do rook b4 now. Okay, so now it looks like I'm gonna get this pawn or this pawn. So with bishop f4, I'm trying to eliminate the defender, get a free pawn right there. Okay, this comes with a check. Now he needs to be careful. Yep. So guys, just like that, with the tactic, we get to win this game. He missed a simple tactic. Yeah, that's it. All right, so guys, nothing to do with what I was planning. Now, I'm not that concerned that we didn't get a Sicilian game because in our next lesson, lesson 114, I'm just going to be playing games. And there, we're going to get some Sicilian, even some games with the English opening for you to see it from White's perspective, more or less similar position types. But we'll get there in our next lesson. Remember, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments and we'll talk there.